Last week, we were just about to arrive in Key West and clear into the United States. We pick up the story the morning after. Little did we know what the next leg would bring. Here we are in Key West, finally. It was a windy arrival. We had 20 to 30 knots as we were leaving the Gulf Stream.
Yeah. So we were flying.
The boat was just honking along. We were doing 7 to 8 knots the whole way across the Gulf Stream, but we were only doing 1 or 2 or 3 knots across the ground. But if anything, the wind picked up as we came closer to the Keys, and the Gulf Stream effects dissipated, and the boat then started showing some real progress. We still had 20 odd miles to cover to get here. The wind held. In fact, it got up to 31 knots at one point. We had full sails up, dead downwind, wing and wing. The boat was surfing up to 13 knots night time, and we were just sitting lounging in the pod, getting up on these surfs, and it's uncanny the way the boat just tracks like a train. We got into the leading lights around midnight, and then it took us about an hour and a half to find our way down the shipping channel, call up port control, who didn't respond. However, Coast Guard did, US Coast Guard, and they were kind enough to give us a phone number for customs this morning. So as we came into Key West, completely foreign port to us, middle of the night, it was very comforting to arrive and see many yachts anchored and moored around. So finally we knew we could just drop the pick, and as a captain and crew you really do experience a sense of relief when you get to that moment. You know you and your boat are safe. It's now midday, we haven't cleared in yet, but we did go and talk to some locals in the dinghy and some fishermen, and they were quite helpful and told us how to find the clearing in procedure. It's quite informal actually, surprisingly enough.
When you come by plane,
Yes,
it's such a difference.
yes, totally.
When you come by boat, it's like casual.
Casual. I was thinking that, that one of the boats would have come out to us. They would have been watching us on radar and on AIS last night. But it just seems so informal. If you were doing something illegal, there would have already been opportunities to finish your illegal activities before, having them inspect the boat. It seems confusing. Oh yeah, glad to be here. Let's clear in, and then we're going to leave in the morning, probably early tomorrow morning, and head up to Fort Myers. It's about 50 miles away, and hopefully make the hui on time. We've got 2 days up our sleeves.
Let's go clear in, at least.
We had pre-arranged visas before arriving in the US, so everything went smoothly with customs and immigration. Although we thought they might, they did not search the boat. For reasons we will explain in a moment, we only had time for a quick beer and a look around as we had to leave right away for Fort Myers.
Living in the castle, we're living in the here.
Oh, that's so hard on Luckyfish. This is a luxurious view. You'd be proud of me, crew. I just took a quick shortcut. Something that you like doing.
Good.
Cut corners. One thing about novice sailors that always puts captains that makes them very uneasy is that they like to cut corners. Rocks are very unforgiving. So we farewelled Key West in pretty good spirits, not aware of what was waiting for us that night. We recounted the events the following day. It felt like we almost capsized. We didn't have long in Key West, did we?
No. We only stayed there night and
I think we got in about midnight, and then we left at 8 p.m. the same day. It was short and sweet visit, but with the just-in-time planning, it sometimes backfires, and I hadn't checked to see what the distance was up to Fort Myers from Key West. I thought it was about 50 miles. Turned out it was 130. Bad mistake. So we were planning on sleeping another night and leaving early in the morning, but when we got back to the boat after a bit of shopping in Key West and clearing in, we realised we had to leave pretty much straight away. So we did. We left at 8 p.m. last night into the teeth of a 25 knot, solid 25 knot easterly.
huge waves.
Waves, big waves. It was very confused. Water steadily, the waves steadily built up as we departed the Keys, left them behind to the south. Where we're heading north now, directly north. And it was, quite a rough crossing so far. Of the 130 miles, 115 of them are at sea. And then there's about a 15-mile trip up the Okeechobee River. It's the start of the Intracoastal until we reach North Fort Myers. We've got about 37 miles to run of the sea leg of that journey. The wind's dropped down to about 15 knots now. But boy, it was a rough night.
Last night we almost capsized.
Almost, it felt like we almost capsized. We had waves just arriving from nowhere and just slapping us. We looked at the chart plotter before finalising the route, which is pretty much a direct line. Noticed 2 wrecks in quite close proximity listed as dangerous. However, they were probably a long way deeper than our keel. But when you see dangerous on a chart, you do wonder what could possibly go wrong. So we passed by them within about a quarter of a mile or so. But as we were travelling, we thought, well, why would there be 2 wrecks in the same spot? This place has got bad spirits. Didn't really think much more of it than that. And then as we were passing the first wreck on the way to the second wreck, we had 3 quite large waves in quick succession go underneath the boat. That wasn't unusual. The size of the waves wasn't unusual either. It was just that there were 3 large ones in quick succession, and that was very strange. Because by the time the third one came around, we wondered when it was going to stop. That was it. The boat just went up and down, rocked sideways, and we were roaring along. We were doing between 8 and 9 knots. 2 reefs in the main, 2 reefs in the foresail, and half a jib out. The boat was just flying.
We were sitting right here.
Yes. So we were happy to let it run because we had a bit of time to make up. And then as we were passing the second wreck, just out of the blue, a big wave impacted the starboard hull so hard and so vertically, the whole boat was just lifted up. Zaya reckons the angle was about 60 degrees. I don't know. I was thrown across the cockpit, landing on my bloody wounded knee, opening it up again. Not good. But I was actually quite concerned. It was an instant thing. It was all over in a second. But the boat did get up on its ear. That wasn't pleasant. And Zaya was alright. You got thrown into the table, right?
Yeah.
So that was a real shitty wave, just out of nowhere. Had a few more ones similar to it, but nothing that size, nothing that sheer, that vertical face on it, whatever it did to the boat. I don't know, it must have just turned it right up on its edge. As a sea captain with millions of miles and friend of Luckyfish told me later, the frequency of coastal rogue waves is grossly underreported or acknowledged. The dynamics of shallow water, wind, current and swell do crazy things sometimes. The incident led me to look deeper into our boat's stability and ask the question, can our boat capsize?
Here is what I learned. The Tiki 38 is a form-stable craft, which means it gets its stability from its shape, primarily its beam. On a monohull, the stability comes from a deep ballasted keel. So how much wind would it take to capsize us? Luckily, the physics for catamarans is not too hard to understand, and luckier still, Wharrams provide the complete set of stability calculations with their designs. Known as the law of moments, the force of wind on the sails tries to lift one hull out of the water, while the beam and weight of the boat resists the force. Using this law, the stability of a catamaran is calculated by finding the wind speed required to lift one hull under full sail. Once a hull lifts clear of the water, the form stability of the boat begins to reduce rapidly, which can lead to capsize. Now, before we get to that wind speed, it's worth noting some important differences between Wharram designs and virtually all other catamarans we come across. And all of the differences relate to stability. Firstly, the sail plan is kept low, reducing the heeling moment. Secondly, the height or windage of the hulls and the cabin sides are also kept low. And thirdly, the hulls are kept narrow, about 20% narrower than a comparable catamaran, meaning they require less sail area to drive through the water. All these features add up to a very safe design and explain why, in static wind conditions, with all sail up and hard on the wind, it would take 38 knots of wind to lift one hull. The wind is seldom static, however. In the late 1970s, James Wharram was instrumental in recognising the importance of the dynamic nature of wind, which led to a safety coefficient of 67% being applied to allow for wind gusts. What that means is we should be reducing sail in winds 25 knots or more. We begin reducing sail in 15 to 18 knots of wind when we're reaching or at tighter angles. So, in answer to the question, can our boat capsize? Unless we were extremely foolhardy, no. Our catamaran will not capsize, and this is borne out by the unequalled ocean safety record of Wharram designs. Minimum vertical clearance. Quite scary, isn't it?
Here we are, America. Well, we count ourselves very fortunate to be here just on sundown.
We've arrived at Fort Myers, one more bridge to go under, and then just to the right is the Fort Myers Yacht Basin, which although it's closed, apparently there's a night watchman there, and hopefully he'll give us permission to berth there tonight, clean the boat, and then turn up over at the Hui tomorrow, probably around noon. I'd say it's going to take us a good morning to get the boat looking semi-respectable. She's had a pretty hard 3 weeks since we left Grenada. We've pushed her pretty hard, and there's a bit of gear breakage, nothing serious, but there's a few repairs to do. And wow, you know, here we are, right on sunset. Hey everyone, we'd like to welcome all our new patrons.
And also say thank you to our existing patrons.
Next week we find out what goes on at a Wharram Hui, check out some other designs, and meet some amazing people.
Don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and thank you for watching.